Television is a tricky business in any event, but if you're producing a live TV broadcast, you're really walking into a minefield. There's something about live TV that seems to make Murphy's Law more likely to kick in than at virtually any other time. And once some ridiculous pratfall or errant curse word or otherwise awkward event is broadcast out into the ether, it can't be taken back. Plus, you can bet that the internet will be there to make sure nobody ever forgets. There are literally hundreds of times that live TV has gone off the rails in one fashion or the other. But today, we've selected for you the cream of the unfortunate head-slapping crop, the most awkward live television moments of all time. Syndicated talk show host and flamboyant TV personality Wendy Williams encountered a bit of a hiccup during the broadcast of the Halloween edition of her long-running daytime talk show in October 2017. Williams returned from a commercial segment and attempted to segue into her yearly costume contest, but something went wrong. The phrase, "our first guest," came out, sounding a bit like "our first caress," which is awkward enough, but then Williams froze, stumbled, and took a header right off the back of the stage. Perhaps the most bizarre thing about the clip is the look on her face, which implies that she knows exactly what's about to happen but is powerless to stop it. After a quick cut to commercial, Williams is on her feet again, explaining that she passed out due to being overheated in her costume. It was an isolated and relatively benign incident, a bit scary as it was happening, but pretty hilarious in hindsight. Former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson has never exactly been known for being a level-headed guy. But when he and promoter Al Choco stopped for an interview at a local news station during a visit to Toronto, things got extra weird. The reporter was asking Iron Mike about his endorsement of Mayor Rob Ford's re-election campaign, starting off with a couple softball questions before bringing up Tyson's rape conviction, implying that his endorsement might not be seen as such a good thing. Tyson at first keeps his cool, telling the man that he's being negative and won't get a response to the question. Choco tries to divert the topic of the conversation, but Tyson simply can't help himself. He interrupts Choco to unleash a flurry of obscenities on the hapless reporter.
It's more nerve-wracking for me to hear us talking to a rap piece of shit. Oh, come on, Mike. Not because you're a piece of shit.
The man informs Mike that they are live, which doesn't help. Attempts to get the interview back on track are only met with more cursing, until finally the poor guy mercifully cuts the interview short. But in true pugilist fashion, it didn't stop Tyson from getting in one last parting shot.
Thank you for coming in.
A San Diego Fox affiliate had an interesting promo in mind to promote the local boat show. On hand with their on-the-scene reporter was a man named John, who stood at the ready to take off with his water-powered jetpack. The intro went well, and John said his line on cue, and then this happened. Cut to our in-studio anchors, who are rendered completely helpless with laughter. The promo wasn't a complete bust, as John manages to triumphantly pilot his rig up and out of the drink. The anchors manage to recover long enough to express their astonishment. John, being a good sport, never loses his beaming smile. And he certainly got everyone's attention, just perhaps not quite in the way that he had hoped. One unfortunate reporter for an Australian TV station was tasked with covering a competition of the foul kind, that is, a bird show where 500 roosters would be judged. Presumably, they were being judged on their size, because the man was holding in his arms the most gigantic rooster you've ever seen. He introduces his feathered friend, at which point the bird promptly decides it's had enough of the entire situation and goes completely bananas on the poor guy. The man responds poorly. As if it's not hilarious enough that he screams bloody murder during the rooster's onslaught, he continues on even after the bird relents, caterwauling at the top of his lungs as he sprints off down the hall. It's just a good thing there was no wall blocking his path. He probably would have left a reporter-shaped hole in it while making his escape. Kelly Osbourne has always been the type to kind of say whatever pops into her head, perhaps a trait she inherited from her father, the legendary rock star Ozzy Osbourne. But during her time as a guest host on The View in 2015, Kelly's tendency to speak before thinking got her into some hot water with her co-hosts, especially Rosie Perez. The panel were debating then-candidate Donald Trump's position on immigration, and after a few thoughtful and well-informed remarks by Perez, Osbourne followed up by blurting out this.
And if you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
All the air was quickly sucked out of the room, and Perez immediately interjected that there were quite a few more career paths for Latinos in the US other than scrubbing toilets. Osbourne attempted to backtrack, but her co-hosts were clearly hearing none of it. Say, Kelly, next time you're taking part in a discussion on immigration policy, maybe don't lead off with a blatantly racist stereotype. In 2015, then Vice President Joe Biden was posing with some newly minted senators during a swearing-in ceremony. It wasn't exactly a momentous event, but it was being broadcast live on C-SPAN, which meant that the vice president's creepiest moment ever would be broadcast to the entire nation, and of course, live on for posterity online. Biden calls over Maggie, the young daughter of the Delaware Senator Chris Coons, to stand by him in the shot to make him look better. Photos are taken, and then Biden leans down to whisper into the young girl's ear for what seems like a really, really long time. The look on Maggie's face, not to mention her body language, are quite clearly screaming, "Somebody get me out of here." And then, just when you think it can't get any more inappropriate, Biden leans in for a kiss, which the little girl adeptly dodges. It's tough to know just what the heck Biden was thinking here, but it's safe to say he came off less like an affectionate grandpa, and a whole lot more as somebody you wouldn't want to let within 100 yards of your children. Marshall Pope was an up-and-coming author and poet from Alabama who was trying to parlay his success in the publishing world into a rap career. Appearing on local show Talk of Alabama to promote a new book of poetry, Pope was invited to recite some of his spoken word material, but instead opted to spit freestyle right off the top of his head. The presenter excitedly got ready to listen to some hot bars, and instead, she got this.
Okay. Years ago, they tried to put me in the.
Pope's freestyle, which consisted solely of the words, "Years ago, they tried to put me in the," bookended by interminable seconds of awkward silence, may just as well has been titled "Deer in the Headlights." We never did find out where they tried to put him years ago, or even who they were, because the host gamely bailed him out by asking if he'd like to read something from his book, which a visibly grateful Pope agreed to do. For all anyone knows, Pope might be a bona fide freestyle genius, but on this day, he was clearly out of order. Game 1 of the 2018 NBA Finals between the Cleveland Cavaliers and Golden State Warriors ended in one of the weirdest ways in recent memory. Tied at 107 with 5 seconds left, shooting guard J.R. Smith came down with an offensive rebound and inexplicably dribbled off the clock instead of taking a final shot. The Cavs were outscored massively in overtime, and the Warriors took the lead in a series which they would eventually sweep. During a post-game press conference, ESPN's Mark Schwartz decided for some reason that the best person to ask about this was Smith's extremely frustrated teammate, LeBron James. James was quite clear that he was not, in fact, privy to the inner workings of Smith's mind and had no idea what he'd been thinking. But that answer wasn't good enough for Schwartz, who proceeded to ask the same question about 6 different ways until King James had finally had enough. He may have come off a bit like a hot-headed teenager, but it's also safe to say that this is one reporter who could stand to refine his technique just a bit. Fox Sports reporter Erin Andrews was on a quest to find superstar racer Danica Patrick while working as an on-the-ground correspondent during the 2013 Daytona 500. She never did find Patrick, but she found someone else, rapper 50 Cent, who was really, really happy to see her. So happy, in fact, that he went in for a full-on smooch on the lips. Andrews, the consummate professional, dodges 50's incoming offensive like a ninja, then greets the rapper warmly while simultaneously putting as much space as possible between them. She resumes her quest, with the rapper trailing awkwardly behind, then throws the segment back to the guys in the booth, without ever once letting on how creeped out she must certainly be. In early 2017, South Korean President Park Geun-hye was impeached following a flurry of scandals. It led to a tense political situation in the country, which was no laughing matter, unless you happen to be watching this intrepid professor attempt to make sense of the chaos during a BBC interview, only to be repeatedly interrupted by his 2 toddlers. They may not have been aware that they were butting into a broadcast that was being transmitted live around the world, but their panicked mother sure was. She really didn't look like she was enjoying her impromptu cameo experience as she hurriedly ushers the kids out of the room. For their part, the kids aren't too pleased with the situation. And even after the poor professor's frantic wife manages to get the door shut, the kiddos can be heard loudly voicing their displeasure throughout the rest of the interview. They're probably just saying that they were going to let him finish. They're obviously the world's youngest fans of the next guy on our list. It was the award speech heard around the world, for all of the wrong reasons. At the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards, Taylor Swift stepped up to the podium to receive the award for Best Female Video for her tune, You Belong With Me. And everything was going well until one of the world's most distinguished loudmouths decided it was time, right then and there, for him to put in his 2 cents. In the middle of Taylor's speech, Kanye West materialized out of the crowd and delivered one of the most profound moments of jackassery in the history of entertainment.
Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Kanye was talking about Queen Bey's iconic video for Single Ladies, Put a Ring on It, which is certainly a great video, but the judges had spoken, and more importantly, Taylor was in the middle of speaking, a fact which didn't keep him from horning her in the spotlight. Beyonce, mortified, could only shake her head in disapproval. The crowd booed, Taylor cried, and Kanye would later offer up a half-baked apology in which he doubled down on his assertion that Beyonce's video was better. The 2015 Miss Universe pageant came down to Miss Colombia Ariadna Gutierrez and Miss Philippines Pia Alonso Werchbach. The two contestants faced each other as host Steve Harvey prepared to read the name of the winner. This may have struck some as strange right off the bat. Traditionally, the name of the runner-up is announced first, but Harvey named Gutierrez of Colombia as the winner. The music played, the crowd cheered, and Gutierrez cried as the crown was placed on her head. And then Harvey edged his way onto the stage with a stunning announcement.
I have to apologize. The first runner-up is Colombia.
It's obvious that at first, everyone thinks the famous comedian is doing a bit, but he was most certainly not doing a bit. He had accidentally named the first runner-up as the winner, and was left lamely explaining himself as the shock of what had just happened registered with everyone. Gutierrez gamely conceded her crown to Werchbach, as if she had any other choice, and Harvey ended the telecast with this gem.
It is my mistake. Still a great night.
If that's Steve Harvey's definition of a great night, we shudder to think of what he'd call a disaster. Scott McIntyre appeared on Season 8 of the long-running singing competition American Idol. The country singer was born with congenital defect that left him almost completely blind, but he blew the judges away with his rendition of Billy Joel's And So It Goes. He was unanimously voted through to Hollywood, and came out of the audition room to a warm reception from friends and family, and this ill-advised high-five attempt from Ryan Seacrest. To his credit, Seacrest recovers fairly nicely, although the only real alternative would have been to slink away in shame. McIntyre would go on to become a fan favorite, and finished in 8th place on the season, meaning that he stuck around long enough for Seacrest to remember and be embarrassed by his gaffe for months on end. During the intro to a recent BBC News broadcast, the presenter opened with a bit of a stumble. Well, more like a series of stumbles. Actually, even more like a display of profound disorientation so complete that it's a miracle. The 3 words that finally made it out of this poor guy's mouth at the end of it all weren't, "What's my name?" After the intro graphics, our hero is first caught completely flat-footed, seeming unsure of where he needed to go, or indeed what was even happening. He then proceeds to race across the stage, and then offstage, where he is apparently ushered back in the right direction by the baffled crew. Finally in the right spot, he orients himself totally incorrect, facing the wrong camera before slowly turning with a bewildered expression to the right. Then, incredibly, he recovers. His delivery is sure and professional, as it surely is at all other times when his brain hasn't temporarily vacated his head.
Hello and welcome.
Director Michael Bay, of Transformers fame, is just as known for his temperament as he is for delivering wild staged action sequences involving giant shape-shifting robots. At the 2014 Consumer Electronics Show, he was asked to help promote Samsung's new curved screen TVs by taking part in a scripted back and forth, which went terribly wrong almost immediately. Bay seems unsure of his place in the script from the get-go, and it only gets worse after the presenter's softball question about where he gets his ideas. Bay voices his frustration, but resolves to press on.
The type is all off, sorry, but I'll just wing this.
as Bay is apparently inarticulate enough about his own ideas that all he can muster is a cliche about taking people on an emotional ride before he resorts to stalking off the stage like an overgrown kid, muttering an apology. Note to all aspiring actors, if you ever find yourself working with Michael Bay, never go off script. He just doesn't do improvisation.